All right, everyone, another goofball has decided to join the GOP field for the presidential bid, and that's Francis Suarez. Interesting. Who? Nobody knows who he is. That's probably a little bit of a problem when you're attempting to, run for the presidency. He's the current mayor of Miami, so it's a reasonable political position. Large city's mayor. We've seen that before in presidential bids. That's okay. The problem is that you have a massively packed field, number one. You have a much more high-profile candidate from Florida, number two, so that home field advantage that might at least net you a couple delegates in one state kind of disappears. And nobody, if you don't have any name recognition whatsoever, you're going up against Trump, okay, technical incumbent, he's been in the office before, he's over 50 points in the aggregate, so he's basically already won. DeSantis, the governor of your own home state, by the way, that might set up some friction between you two in the future. For what little it's worth, Pence and Haley and Chris Christie, at least they have name recognition. And then you've got Ramaswamy, who has less name recognition, but kind of has filtered into that rung of the field because, at least he's sane compared to some of the other candidates. Then you have everyone else. Nobody cares about Hutchinson. Nobody cares about Elder. Nobody cares about Scott, although they keep trying to astroturf his importance artificially. And nobody's going to care about Francis Suarez. Nobody knows who you've got. Less name recognition than who was the other dude that just jumped into the race a few days before this? Can't even remember because it's not relevant. There's not going to be enough space at some point on RCP for them to have every name in the aggregate and actually have one list on one page. They're going to have to split the page because there's going to be too many people in the friggin' field. This is a pointless run. At least with some of these candidates, we know what they're hoping to accomplish. I throw my hat into the ring. I get a handful of delegates. And I softball Trump because, I probably want a job, or I really hardball him because I think that the TDS vote will solidify behind me, giving me a decent second place shot so that if Trump loses in the general, after being nominated, I can say told you so and use that to launch a bid in 2028. That's what Chris Christie, in my opinion, for example, is doing. I don't even think that he's serious about winning in 24 because quite clearly there's no possibility that Christie is going to cross the threshold. That brings me to Mike Pence. I think he might be doing the same thing, although to his credit, he got a very slight bounce after he announced. Seemingly parasitizing a few voters from Ron DeSantis, actually. They may end up actually fighting. There might actually be a battle for second place in the GOP primary. It'd be funny to see them get into a grudge match. It'd probably be all about adjacency to Trump, with them trying to explain to the American voters how they're fundamentally dissimilar when they agreed with Trump 90% of the time. You'll definitely have to do some shifting around of the planks of your platform in order to make that argument. I don't think it'll work. But Suarez, he'll be forgotten within a week. There's nothing particularly special about him. There's not some extra charisma. A certain look, the way you look can play a role in politics, unfortunately. Nothing specifically, no genius level intelligence, no astronomically good job. It's more like, hey, here's a standard politician. I happen to be running. Okay, that's fine, again. But nobody knows who you are. You probably won't even be included in the polls, which, personally, I wish that the polls that are conducted would unify on one thing, and that's not throwing people into the poll that either have announced they're not running, like Sununu is still in some of the aggregates, he said he's not running, or that haven't joined in when you've already got fucking 10 candidates, and focus on the actual candidates that are there. Oftentimes they're left off. It makes more sense if you're going to leave candidates off, just poll Trump and DeSantis because they're the only ones with viability in the field. So then I think that Francis Suarez is doing this for a book deal or something. Or basically for a re-election bid. I don't know how well that will work, by the way, especially when you potentially have just pissed off the governor of your home state. This harms DeSantis more than anyone else. Because if Suarez manages to grab 2 points in the aggregate, where do you think he's grabbing them from? Most likely Floridian voters who approve of him. Well, DeSantis wants those voters because he's the governor of Florida. Home state advantage could give him a state. Although Trump is well ahead in polling in Florida now too, there's the possibility, if DeSantis manages to rise 10 more points, let's say a bunch of other people in the field drop and endorse DeSantis, they say, well, clearly we can't stop Orange Man unless we unify behind one candidate. So I'm driving with DeSantis. And so depending on the candidate, they're driving drunk. Chris Christie, all that food fermenting in his belly makes his intestines basically a winery. But even under such circumstances, you're only looking at Florida, competitive in Iowa and a few other states, and Trump ends up the nominee. So why would you even bother getting into the race at this point? It's basically a done deal. I can see no compelling reason to believe in anything other than the most likely outcome for the GOP primaries. People getting in, therefore, want a cabinet position, or to say told you so like Christie does. Well, I was the only one in the field that attacked Evil Don. I could have beaten him if the other candidates hadn't gotten in the way. We should have been calling him out day by day to keep him from being our nominee, and now he lost the general. That would be exactly what Christie will say if that eventuality occurs. And it's not the most unlikely scenario. Trump is nominated, and then honk manages to lose in the general. There's a possibility of that. I like how the Dems are trying to do reverse psychology. By pretending that they're not afraid of Trump, they're afraid that somebody else will be nominee because they might beat Joe. And dovetailing that with Joe is kind of not a great candidate. They're doing reverse psychology. It's Trump that they're afraid of. They think that they can lock him out. I do believe that they can beat him. Unfairly, mainly. But they're afraid of the possibility. They don't want him to be the nominee. That's why they're going out of their way legally to try to block him. And they're talking about trying to put him in jail, etc., disqualify him from running. And, I don't think they would do it. Why would they be doing that during the primaries if they didn't feel like they were threatened? Nobody seems to be able to explain the nuance there to me. Suarez, in the end, will be below Larry Elder. Nobody will remember that he exists in a week, and he might break through a point. He might get 1 point with voters that simply see absolutely nobody else on the list that they like, so they decided to roll a dice in order to figure out who they should support, because there's so many friggin' candidates. They decided to read their tea leaves and look for the name of the candidate that was willed by God to be the one that they would vote for, or something like that. Well, then you should get an equal share. Yeah, tea leaf reading politics. It'll probably become a new political movement at any time, given our trajectory as a country anyway. That's about all. Peace out.